All right, welcome back, y'all. We are still on topic 2, lesson 3, module 2. So we're talking about page 287, just to verify for y'all, it's page 287 we are working on activity 2. So here we go. We're trying to use double number lines to determine the whole or parts or whatever we need. So it's pretty much the same thing. We set up a proportion. Instead of using a proportion, we use a double number line. A proportion is more efficient and is more widely used. We'll rarely use double number lines, but it is a good method to know. So we're going to answer number 1. How did Carla determine the value that corresponds to 10%? So they want to determine up to 10%. So notice here, this is a double number line. This is money raised on the top bar, percent of goal at the bottom bar. So 240 is 60% of the goal. $40 is 10% of the goal. So once again, we could set that up as equivalent fractions or ratios, as you already know. So I'm just setting that up right here. So once again, how did 60 become 10? That's the big goal. Whatever we do in the denominator, we do to the numerator. We divide it by 6. So they divided by 6. Equivalent fractions, equivalent ratios, whatever you want to say. Or you could have said they simplified the fraction or ratio. So everything that we've learned before keeps building and building. All right, for number 2, if 240 is 60% of the homeroom goal, what is 100% of the goal? So right here is a big deal. It tells you a lot of information right here. 240 is, and what is 100% of the goal? So let's go back to keywords. We know the word of does mean to multiply. It is a way we could figure it out. In our last lesson, we figured out how to determine percentage of a number. So that does correspond to here. Of does mean multiply, just a key math word. Is does mean equal in mathematics. Just some keywords to note. And there's one I'm missing. I just can't remember on top of my head, but it's okay. So 240 is 60%. In our double number line, it shows that correspondence. What is 100% of the goal? So our goal is to figure out 100%. So what do we know? That's the big deal. So $240 is 60%. So 60 over 100, because percent is always over 100. If we're setting it up as a proportion, 240, it said it is that, and we don't know our mystery. So we take what we learned in activity 1 and our setup proportions. That's our equation to figure it out. Could we cross multiply and do our math to figure out 100% of it? Absolutely, we could. Absolutely, we could. But we're going to try to use this double number line technique. So I will finish that part up later. I'm just making sure this red is what we're using for double number lines. So for what we noticed here, 240 is 60%. If we simplified it, we had 10% is 40. Well, 10% times 10 is equal to 100%. What do we know about 10%? 10% is equivalent to $40. Well, if that's for every 10%, then you multiply it by 10, you'll get 10 of those. That's going to be 400. Straightforward. Since we know 10% corresponds to $40, then if you want 100%, you just have to multiply by the 40 by 10, and I'll give you 400. So the answer is actually 400. That's equivalent to 100% is 400. So that's one way to do it. So all you really did was you simplified the ratio or fraction. And then multiplied. Well, let's clarify that. You simplify the ratio or fraction to a factor of 100. 10 is usually the easiest. And then we multiplied. This is the double number line technique. You could use either the cut method, which you learn in lesson 2, where you can figure out 50%, and 25%, and 10%. and then you multiply that corresponding value. So that's what we did here. We figured out 10%. We figured out 10% of the corresponding is 40, and then we multiply. Now, if you want to do it the proportion way, which is the easiest, you would cross multiply, which is 200, 400, and that would equal 60 times mystery. Let me write that clear. Apologies for my crappy handwriting. Come on, work with me, computer. 2,400 is equal to 60 times mystery. And then how we saw that? We would just divide it like normal. Nothing else to it. We would just divide it. So 2,400 divided by 60. So 2,400 divided by 60 is 40. Oh, did I miss a zero? Oh, I missed a zero. Y'all, missed a zero. Oops. That's not 2,400. It's 24,000. So that is 400. And notice, either technique, using the double number line technique or the proportions, gives you the same answer, which they should. They're just different ways to figure it out. All right. So that concludes page 287. We are not going to worry about number 3. That isn't as important. I'm not too concerned with that one. We're going to go to page 288. So we're going to complete each double number line to represent the goals of the other 6th graders. Now this is a lot to read. So we're going to write equivalent dollar amounts for each percent shown. So I'm going to show you what you're reading. All right, I'm going to do a couple of these, and I'll have you do one and show it to me in class. My students, you know, I'm going to grade you for it. So we'll go on about that. And it's okay if you mess up. I just want to see what you're thinking about it. So let's read our chart first, make sure we understand what we're reading. Homeroom, we have 5 of them, 6A, 6B, 6C, 6D, 6E. 60% is equivalent to these numbers, 240, 144, 288. 100% of the goal is equivalent to these numbers, 400, 360, and 120. Just make sure we're reading. So 6A, this is 60%, this is 100%. 6B, this is 60% of 6B. We're missing the 100% of 6B, which is the value. Remember, these are the percentages. Here, 60%, 100. These are the actual corresponding values. So for 6B, let's look at 6B, because that's what this one is referring to, 6B. What do we know about 6B? We know that 60% is 144. So I go here, the percentage is on the bottom. So here needs to be 144. So I labeled it my double number line, 60%, 144. Now, my goal is to figure out 100% of the goal. So I want this part. That's what I want in my double number line. Well, I need to figure out how to simplify this fraction where I can get 10%, or you could have done 20%, or you can do 50%. Those are the easiest values, but you could do any of these and do some math with it. I would advise you go after the 10. It is the easiest in my opinion. So once again, you could figure out how does 60 become 10? 60 becomes 10 by dividing by 6. Whatever you do to the denominator, you do to the numerator. So 144 divided by 6, Mr. Christian don't even know that one. That's 24. So what do we know now? We know 24 corresponds to 10%. So since we know 10% times 10 is 100, and 10% corresponds to 24, you need to multiply that by 10, and that'll give you 240. So we now know to get 100%, you need 240. Once again, did we have to go after the 10? Could we have gone after, let me change colors real quick. Could we have gone after the 30 and done it? Yes, but I want to give us to 100. Could we go on after 20? Absolutely. 20 would have worked, divide each by 3, and then multiply, but that would be multiplying by 5 instead. So if you understand that method, you can try that out. I'll do letter B. It says look for 6C. So, is this thing working? Okay. Okay, it's working now. So 6C, so 100% is 360. So we know 100% corresponds to 360. I want to know 60% of the goal. So what I want to know is in purple. I want to know 60%. Once again, you can figure out how did 100 become 60 with a proportion set up. Those are absolutely valid. I could even done it in 6B if you want to set up a proportion. So just to show you for 6B, I'm going to choose green. You didn't have to do with a double number line, but it is representative, and that's what we're doing for these problems. You could have also done it as a proportion. So as a proportion would have been 1, 4, 4. Oh, no, we'll do it later. We'll do that later. Yeah, I don't want to confuse y'all. So 360 over 100, and we want 60. So once again, how did 100 become 10? We're going to divide it by 10. What do we do to the denominator? We do to the numerator. So that'll be 36. So that is not our answer. We want 60%. So I'm going to change colors. Let me change to like teal. So how does 10 become 60 times 6? What do we do to the numerator, denominator? We do to numerator. So what's 36 times 6 will give us our answer. 216. All right. If you were a little bit lost while I was explaining for part 6B, that's perfectly fine. 6D, let's see if I might be able to show for 6D. For 6D, 60% is 288. 60% is 288. I want to know 100%. That's what I want to know. I want to know 100%. There are a couple ways. So let's do the double number line. So what we do know is that 60% is this. How does 60 become 10? Actually, let me trick you a little bit. Let's not do 60 become 10. Let's do 60 to 20. You can still do 10. That's perfectly fine. I'm just going to show you something. So I divide this by 3. Because 60 divided by 3 is 20. Once again, whatever we do to the denominator, we do to numerator. And that's going to be 96. And I choose green. So then you ask yourself, how does 20 become 100? Times by 5. So what's 96 times 5? 480. So the answer is 480. Notice I didn't go to 10%, I went to 20. That's perfectly fine. If you can see it and it's easier, you can still do 10, you'll get the same answer. So 480. And for 6E, I would advise you to pause the video when you have the chance and try to do 6E on your own before I continue on it. I'm just going to write this first setup part. 120 is 100%. So let me see. So they want to know 60. So I'm going to circle that part. This is what they want to know. I would advise you to pause the video and try this part yourself. It's not too bad. So if you understand what we're doing here, you should be able to set it up, all right? I'll even show you the proportion method in a second. It'll probably be easier anyway. But please pause the video now and try it on your own, okay? Okie dokie. So once again, we can do the same method. So let's see if you got it right. So I want to get to 60. Well, probably my smartest bet would be to either get to 10 or 20. I'm going to do 20 again just to show you that. So if I do that, I divide by 5. 120 divided by 5 is 24. So you're trying to get to 60. 20 times 3 is 60. So 24 times 3 will get you right. And that's going to be 72. So the answer is 72. So that's using a double number line. If you like that method, that's perfectly fine. It is a bit longer, but it's very visual and easy to see. If you want to set this up as a proportion, you have to understand what you're reading. What we knew was what we wanted to know was 60% out of 100. And we knew the total was 120 because that's 100. 100 is equal to 120. 100% is equal to 120. So you would set it up like that. Now, I will give a bonus point for my students if you're able to do C, B, and A using a proportion setup and show it to me tomorrow. C, B, and A. That is bonus if you want to try it with me. All right. But good job for activity 2. We have completed activity 2. We are going to skip activity 3. We're not going to do activity 3 at all. So I'm going to just go right through that. Okay, activity 4. So we are going to work activity 4 out. And we are going to do parts of activity 5 as well. But very good work. So get prepared for activity 4, right? Great work, y'all.